Hey guys. So, happy Wednesday. I wanted to share with you this big epiphany I had while studying Genesis this week. I'm going over it with a friend, and we're in studying Joseph's story right now. I don't know if you know that story, but if you know Joseph in the Technicolor Dreamcoat, maybe you do sorta. But basically, summary. So, Joseph, all his brothers were jealous of him. They sold him into slavery. He worked at Potiphar's place, and Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep with him, and at one point accused him of basically sleeping with her, and he got in trouble and went to jail. But he did not sleep with her. And when he was in jail, he later interpreted the dream of the cupbearer, the Pharaoh's cupbearer, and the Pharaoh's baker. And from there, he was like, yo, cupbearer, like when you're put back into place, could you let the Pharaoh know that I was wrongly imprisoned and I was even like kidnapped? I'm not a slave, help me, kind of thing. And 2 years later, the cupbearer remembers. And that's Genesis 41, where I had my big epiphany about patience. So, yeah, in 41, the cupbearer remembers because the Pharaoh has a dream and no one in the land can interpret it. They brought all the most well-known magicians who are supposed to be very wise and mystical, but no one can figure out the dream. No one can interpret it for the Pharaoh. Then the cupbearer is like, oh yeah, there was a guy I was supposed to mention before. Yeah, so in prison there was a guy who interpreted my dreams. He should listen to your dream. And so, yeah, they bring out Joseph, and he says, like, through God, I'll be able to interpret your dream. And he does. He says there's going to be 7 years of surplus in your crops, and then 7 years of famine. And he said, you need someone wise and discerning who's going to go through all of Egypt and, like, manage the food so you have enough saved up for the 7 years of famine. And the Pharaoh's like, dude, like, you are the most wise and discerning person because you're the only one who could interpret that dream. So, yeah, instantly he becomes second in command of all of Egypt. Like, dang. He went from a prisoner to second in command of all of Egypt, all in a day. Like, what the heck? The biggest tear jump in anyone's life ever. So, that taught me a few things. Number one, don't worry about your progression in life because you're exactly where you need to be, and if God wants you at a certain place, he can get you there, no problem, whenever. He can do anything. Number two, you're like, dang, 2 years, that sucks. Like, so much waiting in Joseph's life. He's just always waiting. He's in prison. It was 13 years from when he was sold into slavery until this point where he became second in command of Egypt. So there's a lot of waiting on God and like what's happening kind of thing. But he was still diligent, he trusted, and yeah, he was working hard no matter what. And that brought him here. And I thought about it. If the cupbearer had remembered about Joseph, like, right away, then maybe the Pharaoh would have been like, oh, okay, yeah, go home. Sorry, what? You're free. And if he went home, I bet the brothers would have been, like, in big trouble, number one, and then they probably would have hated me even more, you know? So, and then he would be shepherding flocks, and that would be his life. But there was something greater, a greater plan. And so that's why it was exact moment 2 years later when the Pharaoh needed an interpretation of a dream that Joseph came into play. So it was very purposeful that he had to wait those 2 years. And it made this amazing thing happen. Number 3 that I learned is I was looking back on everything, and I was like, dude, God was working like on Joseph's skills so he could be prepared for this moment to take up second in command. Because at first he was shepherding flocks. Then when he was sold into slavery, he was so diligent that Potiphar made him in charge of his whole household. So he's managing a whole household. Then when he was put in prison, he was so good that the jail chief put him in charge of the entire prison. So then he was managing a prison. which led him up to being in second command and managing all of Egypt and prepping for this huge famine that was going to happen. So it's just so cool to see that progression, and that God was helping him develop the skills that he needed for that important moment. So I don't know about you, but that reassures my heart so much that, God is very purposeful, that he's in control, that he's making you wait for a reason. We want things now, but he knows purposefully when to do something and why to do it. So I don't know. That just helps me take a load off my mind and my shoulders and just trust and just know that the same God that was working in Joseph's lives is the same God working in our lives. But yeah, that was something cool I want to share, guys. Okay, have a great Wednesday, guys. Bye.